What's going on, guys? My name is Tommy. Welcome back to the channel. It's that time once again for another episode of Min-Maxing for Fun and Profit. Today, at the request of Grant Stevens, we're going to prove to our GMs once again that we still can tear their encounters apart by being giant monsters and things. That's right, we're min-maxing a Wild Order Druid. If you guys are liking what you're seeing, remember, hit that like and subscribe button. We have a special shout out today. Today's episode is brought to you in part by patrons, but it's also brought to you in part by a couple of non-patrons. Specifically, today's episode of Min-Maxing for Fun and Profit was brought to you in part by Anthony, Chewy, Dan, Eric, and Robin. My Doomsday Dawn players, thank you guys so much for being cool across 4 books. We just wrapped up The Mirrored Moon. It's been a blast so far. I'm super honored to be able to receive enough patronage to do this with you, do this for you. And hey, unfortunately, one of our guys did have to drop. We are recruiting a 6th man for the Heroes of Undarin. Justin, if you're out there, I will move heaven and earth to make a spot for you in this game if your work schedule moves back, because I didn't get to kill you with quicksand and I'm still full of vengeance, to say nothing of Carrion Crown. With 1.6 coming right around the corner, we're taking a week off so everybody can get their build ready. We'll be starting on Friday the 16th. We play from 7 to 10 p.m. Central Time. If you'd like to join up, throw it in the comments, and remember that patronage at any tier gets you a second entry in this giveaway, as well as all of our giveaways. And if you're feeling generous enough to give at the highest tier, you, of course, automatically win. But enough about that, let's tear things apart, shall we? Okay, so back in the day, the Wild Order Druid wasn't really so much of a thing, so much as it was the option for the Druid. Classically speaking, we're a full caster, but also if we want to buff all our stats and suddenly we're a bear or a tiger, or usually a tiger, frankly, tearing the world apart, we are, in fact, able to do so. It's one of the reasons the Druid is the Tier 1 class, at least one of them. In Pathfinder 1st edition, mostly, the gigantic spell list and the ability to rest to refresh it and choose new spells again, but this was the way to keep your Druid in melee. Oh, by the way, dip Monk, take Feral Combat Training, or Gestalt into Monk. Suddenly your AC is really high and you're a bear who's doing Kung Fu. In the playtest, it's a little different. I've had the distinct pleasure of GMing for a Wild Druid at level 4 up to 5, because I let my guys level in Pale Mountain Shadow, because, man, Quicksand's mean. They deserved it. And the build is nothing short of terrifying. It's also a very, very redundant build. What you see is what you get. You're really, really, really good at it, and it benefits you in the same way that the 1st edition Magus might carry 100,000 pearls of power in his pocket so he could shock and grasp until he was blue in the face from the reflection from the lightning as he kills his enemies. You're in the same boat. You do one thing really good and it benefits you in a million ways to do so. Now, as for our race, we are a primary, upfront, in-your-face, melee kind of build. And so I can't not see myself choosing the Dwarf for this build, because those 10 racial hit points seem real nice. Our Dwarf wants to prioritize his strength because we need his strength, with Constitution and Wisdom right behind. Oh wait, those are the buffs that the Dwarf gets. We won't do a big chop down of how the ability scores work, but Strength is your highest, save based in there as well. Charisma, Intelligence, don't even need them. We're fine with an 8 Charisma Druid. It hurts for resonance, but we don't even really need it, to tell you the truth. More on that in a second. As a disclaimer, Pathfinder 1.6 is right around the corner. Literally, it's coming out in 2 days. This build may tip on its head between here and there, but I still wanted to do it. And if you're one of those guys out there who's not wanting to keep up with everything, but wanting to play some playtest, hey, so much the better. This one's for you. Now, as for your general feats, you're an expert in Fort and Will, but only trained in Reflex and Perception, so Alertness and Lightning Reflexes certainly got to be in there somewhere. Being adopted by halflings will never, ever not be relevant in this meta, because lucky halfling. and Lucky Halfling's bigger cousin, Guiding Luck. Because sometimes RNGesus just doesn't like us, we've got to be prepared for that. On top of that, we're a dwarf, and as of 1.5, we've got a lot of really cool Ancestry feats on the dwarf. Mountain Stoutness stacked on with Toughness means we're getting a lot of hit points. Now, there's a typo, I think, in Mountain Stoutness saying each time you gain a level, adjust your max hit points from Hardy. I should probably say from Mountain Stoutness, but take that, take Toughness, and we're stacking the hit points on this guy. Because they're cumulative, it's so good. Also, your recovery rolls are a little easy too, but we shouldn't get there. We're not getting Stone Cunning, but Stonewalker will still allow us to meld into stone once per day as an innate divine spell. Yes, we can't cast that in our normal attack form, but that's still a really good get-out-of-jail-free card. It's like Tree Shape. And of course, that's still a spell we have, but if we don't find any trees, if we think we're going to be playing in the mountains, if there's going to be a rock somewhere, literally, this is just turn the corner, poof, you're gone. Now, down to the meat and potatoes. I thought about a fighter dedication, I really did, and you probably could if you really wanted to, but the name of the game here is redundancy. Redundancy is what keeps us alive. We're real good at what we do, and what we do also is very toolboxy. What I mean by that is you almost always, as a wild druid, especially as things level up a bunch, will have an answer to every single solitary combat situation. A lot of out-of-combat situations as well. Now, being a Wild Order druid says that you gain the Wild Shape Druid feat as well as Wild Claws at the cost of a spell point, but we're not worried about that. That is our feat at level 1, our first class feat, Wild Shape. You gain a pool of Wild Energy, which is called your Wild Shape pool, with one use that you can use to cast the spell to shift your form. If you have at least 4 Wild Order feats, increase that pool to 2 uses. You can spend a use of your Wild Shape to cast at level 1 Pest form, the saddest of all forms. All spells you cast using Wild Shape function as if heightened to the highest maximum spell level you can cast unless stated otherwise. Now, because we're a Wild Order druid, we gain a number of additional uses of that equal to our strength modifier. So when we're coming down with all the strength in the world, that pool's really big. And that pool is allowing us to cast spells. Combo that pool up with actually preparing Animal Shape, Dinosaur form, Soaring Shape, Insect Shape, all of the above, means we have a lot of resources. Now, if you think you're not going to have a lot of encounters in a given day, if that's not how the game works, you might be able to, again, squeeze in some fighter feats here and there to buff out your attacks. But all of our Wild Shape abilities give us temporary hit points, and eventually we'll heal when we do it as well. So that's the idea. Turn into a monster, tear things apart, get hurt, go out of the form, cast heal if we need to. Oh yeah, by the way, we're still a full primal caster. Things will die to our fireballs if they need to. No natural spell though, so you will have to be a dwarf to do it. Then polymorph again, gain more temporary hit points, lather, rinse, repeat until the encounters are over. All of our feats, every single last class feat, save for one. Oh, speaking of feats, for a general feat, we've got one more Jam Incredible Initiative in there, because that's probably better for us than Die Hard. Anyway, our second level feat is the only one that breaks its Savage Slice. For one action, when your last action was a weapon strike that dealt slashing damage at feat level 2, make another strike against the same target using the same weapon. If it hits, add an additional die of damage. This is fantastic with anything that has forceful, like, oh, I don't know, the scimitar we're carrying until level 4 when we get Animal Shape. Because, let's be honest, Pest form turning us into something with weakness 5 to all physical damage, a speed of 10 feet, an attack that does a single point of piercing damage is not the best. Though, of course, turning into a tiny animal will have its utility. In early level play, we're better off just swinging that scimitar for 1d6, then Forceful would kick it up again, then swing again with Savage Slice for 2d6 plus 2, because, you know, Forceful. Back on track at feat level 4, Animal Shape is where the build starts to really pick up. Animal shape lets us cast animal form by spending a use from that pool. You can do so at 4th level, even though a 3rd level spell is higher than the highest spell level you can otherwise cast. So when we hit here, we're here and we're with value. We'll look at the individual shapes and things here in a second. Some of their utility obviously will be more useful than others. Some will be more combative, some will be better at running, some will have climb speeds, etc. The build is incredibly toolboxy. And at feat level 6, it's insect shape. To cast insect form, spending from that pool. Ferocious shape at level 8 gives us dinosaur form. I think you see where we're going with this. At 10th level, we'll grab soaring shape for aerial form, which allows us, by the way, if you had animal shape to turn into a bat or a bird. Insect shape turns you into a wasp. If you have ferocious shape, you can turn into a pterosaur, because who doesn't want to be a dinosaur? Now, the fun stuff comes after that. Remember, we don't get at 16 or 12 a class feat, instead our spellcasting buffs. The next one we're taking is called Form Control. It's a free action with Wild Shape as the prereq. Its trigger. Using Wild Shape, you cast a polymorph spell with a duration of a minute or longer that would ordinarily be heightened at least 1 level above its lowest spell level, so casting off your pool basically. By adding a somatic casting to the action of casting that spell, and spending an additional use from your pool, the spell is heightened to 1 level less than your max instead of your max, but you can remain transformed for up to an hour or the listed duration, whichever is longer. You can still dismiss it at any time as permitted by the spell, but this is for your overland travel. Do you need to be a shark for an hour to explore some ruins? Boom, Form Control. No longer sitting on that 10-round timer. Now you've got a bunch more. Same obviously goes for flying. If you need to climb for an hour, if you need to be in the mountains and you're a spider, boom. At 14th level, it's Healing Transformation. A free action with the trigger, you cast a non-cantrip polymorph spell that targets only 1 creature, so trigger, you do what you do. Add a somatic casting to that action to regain 1d6 hit points per level of the triggering spell to the target. This is the 1-2 punch. Drop out of your form, go again, temporary hit points from the form, actual healed from Healing Transformation. You should be able to stay in the fight pretty long, especially considering if you really need to, move back, end the spell, heal yourself, other people can heal you. It's nothing short of what you kind of expect a tank to be in a tabletop role-playing game. Now, we have no means of holding aggro, of course. Things are going to do what things are going to do. But eventually our battle forms are going up to huge, and I imagine that gums up a lot of passageways, and you're just constantly healing yourself. Nothing can stop you. Finally, at the end of the day, it's Dragon Shape, which lets us cast Dragon form off our Wild Shape pool. Now, it was almost true Shape Changer. To get Shape Change on a Wild Shape pool, which lets you shift from thing to thing faster, but we needed Dragon Shape to get it, and we just get feet choked, and those free action feats at the end there are just, you gotta have them. They're really good. They keep us toolboxy, they keep us healed. What more do you want? Now, let's talk about combat, because that's what we're here for as the Wild Druid. I won't break down all of the, here's the stats you get. We'll talk about them a little bit, and just understand that it's basically the same idea as you go. Animal form, which remember, you're auto-heightening to 4th as a Wild Druid, even though you couldn't, turns you into a medium animal battle form for 2 actions. You count as an animal in addition to your normal traits, your gear is absorbed into you, the constant abilities of your gear still function, but you can't activate that gear. Whilst transformed, you gain 1 or more unarmed melee attacks, which are the only types of attacks you can use. You are trained with them, your attack modifier is +10, and your damage bonus is +5, which probably tracks with what you had anyway. They're strength-based for the purposes of, enfeebled. 10 temporary hit points while you have the form, and see, we can just refresh that. That's what Tugar did in Pale Mountain Shadow, Robin, just in, out, in, out, in, out. Low light vision, an athletics bonus of 11 unless yours is higher, and then several forms, some of which are faster than others, some of which have multiple attacks that are agile, some of which have climb speeds, some of which have scent, some of which have swim speeds. Really, it's 100% modal, what you need right then. Is there quicksand? Are you going to drown? Polymorph into a snake, and out you go. Now, there is one hang-up that I have with this build. I may have miscalled it in Pale Mountain Shadow, so sorry about it if I did. But just like the Animal Companion, which I also miscalled by gearing it out, these special statistics can be adjusted only by penalties, circumstance bonuses, and conditional bonuses. That means there's no item bonus. You cannot wear bracers of armor, though they'd still function. Hand wraps of Mighty Fist are absorbed into your form and still function, but it's an item bonus, so not a lot you can do there. Now, I know, I can hear everyone. We're worried about how our damage might fall off without those items, and it is a bit of a hang-up. But heighten this thing to 5th, our attack modifier goes up to 16, our armor class goes up to 27, though I think a 27 is still incredibly hittable, if not crittable, so it's worrisome. And we double our damage dice, so it's 48 on that bear's jaws. Not bad. I feel like most of the time we're looking at that cat form because we want slashing damage. The bear does a d8, but the cat's agile claws will throw down a d10. So a d10, then 2d10, then 2d10, or 2d10, then 3d10, then 3d10. Corrosive, axiomatic, if we're lawful, flaming. Those all should seem to work, to say nothing of like ghost touch if you think you're going to be fighting a bunch of ghosts. And that is my recommendation to you guys for enchanting your weapon. Can't get a buff to hit, but there's nothing saying we can't have an unholy claw or a shock. Really, it's just 100% dependent on your meta, what you're going to fight, what will be the most effective. Anyway, next up it's insect form. Again, it's the same idea. You get a new armor class, temporary hit points, natural attacks, things of that nature. But the thing about the insect form is a lot of these have dark vision, a lot of these have tremor sense, a lot of these have climb speeds. The wasp, of course, can fly. And you know what's real scary? The spider. I saw the spider hit the board against a manticore that I put a barbarian level on in Pale Mountain Shadow. 1d4 persistent poison is really scary. When you target something that doesn't know how to shut that persistent damage off, it continues ticking up and up and up. Heightening to 4th and 5th is basically the same idea forever. And that includes the persistent damage, so all that persistent poison we get just continues going up. I love it. But you know what else I love more? Dinosaurs. Yeah, that's right. I was that kid at one point. And the Pathfinder role-playing game lets him live on dinosaur form. Again, basically the same idea, except this one starts out at large and eventually heighten it to 7. You can go to gargantuan, throw an extra dice around. It's real mean. A Deinonychus's talon does 1 persistent bleed. The Triceratops can do a d6 of persistent bleed on a critical hit. The Ankylosaur gets a +1 conditional bonus to its AC with a tail that will beat your face in. No climb speeds or anything fun here, but also you are a dinosaur. What more do you want with your life? I don't know. It's more of the same when we have aerial form. And remember, we're grabbing these as most of our spells as well, because there's no reason to not if we think we're going into combat, because this is what we do, especially if the meta is particularly mean, because we're constantly just healing ourselves, we're constantly just getting temporary hit points. We're like the barbarian in that way, except we don't have a fatigue round. Well, I guess we do. There's a round where we do nothing because we spend an action to end the spell, then 2 actions to transform again. But somebody haste us. Please, will be awesome if you do. And aerial form is a little bit less of our fighting form, though it certainly can. Because who doesn't want to turn into a pterosaur, heighten to 6th, and do 6d6 points of piercing damage, or throw persistent poison down? Really, it's, again, I can't say it enough, it's the same idea over and over and over. 100% modal for what you need. A fly speed, echolocation, a climb speed, poison, tremor sense, a really fast move speed. It's all right there. Constantly refreshing ourselves. It's really hard, speaking from experience, to take this build out. And should you run out of resources, and you probably won't, you still got that scimitar and savage slice. You can definitely enchant that scimitar, and you might as well, because you're not really spending your gold on anything else. In addition to your armor, maybe your saves are a little better when you're not an animal. Funny how that works. And just become a spinning engine of death swinging a forceful scimitar around. Failing that at low level play, if you're fighting a lot of things that are vulnerable to it, Shillelagh is definitely a thing. As long as you're on your home plane, I bet you are, especially at level 1. In an aberration, an extraplanar creature, and an undead, and that's 3d8 if you're holding that quarterstaff two-handed at level 1 on a spell. It's really mean, and should we run out of resources, that's definitely there. But we're not too worried about running out of resources because, again, from the power of our pool, from the power of having these spells, we probably never did. And with that in mind, if you find yourself not running out of resources, the primal spell list has Fireball, it has Heal, it has haste even, so hey, we get haste ourselves. Wow, self-sufficiency. The class is just terrifying. I really wish we didn't have to take this one on a power. I really wish we could have got True Shapeshifter, but I really feel like sometimes you're going to need to fly for an hour. Sometimes you might need to swim for an hour, so we just have to have form control, and healing transformation is too good to not. Dragon form is essentially our capstone. In addition to the black dragon throwing down acid damage on its bite, in addition to the blue dragon doing a full d12 of electricity when it bites you, 2d6 poison from the green, etc. This is the only way right now to fireball in your wild shapes form, because again, no natural spell. We just have it on a breath weapon. Heighten this bad boy up to 8, and we landed an armor class of 34. With a plus 14 conditional bonus to breath weapon damage. So 10d6 plus 14 from your white dragon. Also your accelerated 20 on your fly speed. So a fly speed of 120 over the course of an hour. Haste yourself and then switch. That means for a little while moving in, you've got 4 actions, moving at 120 feet. Eventually, of course, that wears off, and you're only going times 3. But 4 strides mean you move almost 500 feet in a round. This is the travel form. This is the apex. I'm playing a Druid sorcerer right now, and I can't wait, though he's a storm Druid, to turn into a blue dragon and tear people apart. And tear people apart you do. It's going to sound like I'm not going super in-depth with this build. I don't want anybody to think that I'm shorting him. I'm not trying to. But it's a very color by numbers idea. Shift into the form that best suits the situation. As you level up, things may be weak to electric, and remember, plan your property runes accordingly. They might be weak to poison, they might be weak at lower levels to piercing, slashing, bludgeoning. You've got all the tools in the toolbox right there, and you're still a spellcaster. We didn't touch spells that much. We're not really going to, because the idea here is just to show how super scary this build on the front lines really is. I literally have just re-hyped myself to play Mirrodin O'Brien on Tuesdays at Greenwich Colonies because I can just grab these as spells. But for example, really quickly before we sign off, heighten dragon form all the way up. That makes it an 8th level spell. So in addition to the 10 temporary hit points you grab whilst you have that form, that's 8d6 heal. That's essentially a free lay on hands. Right? That's super terrifying. And if you get hurt too much, you just do it again. It is so amazing. I love it. What do you guys think about this? Have you played a Wild Druid yet? Have you GM'd for one? And what are they doing to tear your campaign asunder? Let me know all about it in the comments. And remember, if you're wanting to Doomsday Dawn with us, now's the time. I'll probably decide a winner around the 14th, 15th of November. But that's all we have for today. Thank you guys so much for watching. Remember to like and subscribe for more videos. The next episode of Min-Maxing for Fun and Profit, where we're going to optimize, not archetype into, but optimize the fighter